I'm an introvert. I don't hate people, I'm fine with people. I'm the kind that finds small talk genuinely exhausting. Especially walking into a room full of strangers and making conversation from scratch takes energy. I honestly rather spend on something else, sitting quietly at one corner, eating, or even an extra 5 minutes in the toilet cubicle. So my usual strategy at networking events is to find someone I know, stand next to them, and let them do the talking. If I don't know anyone, I will find a food table and make sure no food get wasted. That's my default mode when I show up at any HR event, positioned near the refreshments and looking extremely busy with my coffee. And then someone walked up to me. Adrian, right? I follow your work. I saw you on LinkedIn. And then someone else. And a third person mentioned a piece I've written months ago that probably has inspired them somehow. I haven't said a single word about myself. I didn't have to. The conversation started from a place of existing familiarity, and because of that, they actually went somewhere. The same thing happened at a recent art box. I posted a video about my oldest daughter's 14th birthday, and I was there to just help host a podcast and enjoy the evening. And people came up to me, talk about the video that I posted. At a night market, I have to be honest, I did not see that coming. But the dynamic was very identical to the HR event. Being known in advance meant I didn't have to explain myself from zero. The conversation had somewhere to go immediately. And for an introvert, that is not a small thing. That is the difference between an event I dread and an event I actually leave feeling that it was worth the parking. And here's why it matters beyond the personality type. When I talk to people who want to go fractional, people who want to leave the corporate world and sell their expertise independently, the thing they're worried most about isn't the work. Usually they're good at their work, that's not the question. The question is, how do I get customers? And the honest answer most people don't want to hear is this. You don't get customers by being good. You get customers by being trusted. And trust is very hard to establish. From a cold email or a cold DM sent by someone they probably have never heard of. The traditional answer is networking. Go to events, meet people, build relationship. The advice isn't wrong, but it is slow, exhausting, and requires you to make the first move every single time, which, if you are anything like me, has a very low ceiling. There is a better model, and I know it works because I've run it. When I was running Career Ladder, my career coaching practice, I had two things working in my favor before any client conversation started. First, I had written a book, Everything You Wish to Ask a Headhunter. Second, I held the #1 Google search result for career coaching Singapore. Now, I want to be clear, the Google ranking was not some sophisticated SEO strategy. I had written a lot about career coaching and I needed a way to leapfrog my competition who had decades of experience. With my limited funds, I invested in an SEO agency, and together with my own content, Google had noticed. My sales pipeline was as surprised as I was. I did not cold call a single person. Inquiries came to me. Was I the best career coach in Singapore? I really cannot verify that claim. But because when someone searched for help and found me and the book, and the search result had already done the trust building work, by the time they emailed, they were 90% convinced before we had even spoken. That's what a reputation that precedes you actually does. It converts strangers into warm leads before you've even opened your mouth. So whether you are going to become independent or simply trying to accelerate your trajectory on your career ladder, here are 8 power moves that I'm about to walk through on how you can build that. These are not marketing tactics, they are reputation infrastructure. Each one puts a signal into the world, under your own name, in your own domain, that lasts longer than any campaign and compounds over time. And for fractional executive and self-employed professionals, they solve the specific problem that kills most practices in the first year. Nobody knows who you are yet. Now let's go through them. Nothing signals expertise the way a book does. Imagine doing a pitch and every one of your competition introduces themselves with their name cards. You, on the other hand, hand out a book. It just feels different. During my career coaching days, when I walked into training engagement at James Cook University or Prudential, I didn't pitch myself. The book had already pitched me. The conversation skipped from "tell me why I should trust you" to "we would like to explore this." My second book, No More Bosses, is about the journey to self-employment and fractional work. At the time of this recording, it is probably Singapore's only book on fractional leadership. This sounds more impressive than it is. The space was simply there, and I walked into it first. But that's the point. First mover advantage in authority building is real, and a lot of niches are still unclaimed. I'll be honest, no more bosses has yet to deliver the tangible downstream results that the first book did. I mean, which company would want to hire me to give a talk to their employees to become entrepreneurs? So other than the book sales, which my publisher points out is technically the purpose of a book, but with Singapore's growing interest in fractional work, I cannot think of a stronger long-term signal than having written the only book in the space. And writing a book today is so much easier than before. Have you heard of Shoe Dog by Phil Knight and Open by Andre Agassi? Both are bestsellers. Both really show you the insights of each respective authors, the way they think, their darkest thoughts, and also deepest conflicts. They are also not written by the listed authors. Instead, they were ghostwritten. Now, this is where AI can come into play. You don't need to hire a ghostwriter. AI can play one. Once you have established the outline of your book, just get AI to act as a ghostwriter and interview you. For each chapter, aim for about 100 questions to really tease out your personal stories and lived experience, because those are the ones that nobody else can replicate. Stats, citations, parables, those are stuff anyone can copy from the internet. If you're truly into this, set aside 2 hours a day. You could get a first draft in less than 1 month. And editing is always easier than a first draft from a blank page. This is where you take your time to go through the manuscript manually and edit them for better read and flow. Or if you have the budget, just outsource this to a professional editor. Remember the HR event? The reason people approached me was partly because they've seen me speak at events they've respected. Speaking does something that posting cannot replicate. It puts your face, your voice, your thinking in the same room as the exact people you want to know. And the physical dynamics of a stage, you're elevated, you have a microphone, everyone is facing you, giving you fullest attention. It creates a credibility impression that simply doesn't happen on a screen. There's also a beautiful introvert-friendly aspect to speaking that most people miss. When you present, you don't have to start any conversation. People come to you after. The content you've just delivered is the entry point for every exchange that follows. You've done the hard work in advance. The networking happens almost by accident. Now, if keynoting a conference feels like a stretch, start with moderating a panel or even be a guest on a panel. You're on the stage, you're directing the conversation, and you're building a relationship with every expert you introduce. I've seen people go from moderator to featured speaker at the same event within 1 or 2 years. The entry point matters less than showing up at all. So how to get started? Look at events in your space, reach out to the event organizer. My first speaking gig was at a book fair, where looking back, I have no idea why I was there. But I needed an entry point, and they gave me one. Event organizers always need lineup to fill up the entire program. And usually, they may only have budget for the keynote, but you got to start somewhere. So just like me, find one that may be willing to give you the stage for free in exchange for your time. Academic affiliation changes how you're introduced. Your name, who also lectures at a reputable school, lands different in the room than, your name and consultant. Not because one is more real, but because the institution names carries a trust shortcut that takes years to build independently. When you teach, the implicit signal is someone credible enough to run a school program decided your thinking was worth putting in front of their students. That's not self-declared expertise. That is a third-party validated expertise. Identify 2 or 3 IHLs whose program touches your domain. Reach out to their program director. They are often looking for practitioners who have done the actual work, not just know the textbook. Now, this may take a while, as I came to know there is a lot more supply than demand right now. You gotta get the ball moving with the decision makers as soon as possible, since it's gonna take time for the old guards to exit and before there is space for you. I was awarded SHI Entrepreneur of the Year and named as AIHR Global HR Influencer. These two really open up conversations and client relationships that years of self-marketing had not. Because those credentials appeared in introductions I didn't write, in searches I didn't control, in contexts that I wasn't in. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Many awards receive far fewer applications than their prestige suggests. The barrier isn't qualification, it is the discomfort of self-nomination. People find the idea of putting their name forward slightly embarrassing, which means your competition has largely pre-eliminated themselves, which is honestly quite convenient for the rest of us. So research the awards relevant to your space, submit your candidacy. The worst outcome is a rejection, and clearer feedback on how you are perceived in your field. That's not nothing. Fractional executives get their best work from referrals, and referrals come from relationships. Relationships form fastest inside rooms where the people you want to know are meeting regularly. Industry body committees are in those rooms. the Singapore Computer Society, Singapore Institute of Directors, etc. The people on these committees are the exact professionals who later recommend advisors and fractional leaders to their organization. Serving alongside them puts you in their consideration set in a way that no number of posts can actually achieve. Fair warning, committee work does involve a lot of non-trivial amount of administrative emails and scheduling. And some of the politics in those committees will make your condo MCST one seem meek. That, unfortunately, is the price of admission. So go and find 2 or 3 trade organizations in your domain. Show up in their event first, volunteer for the committee that's most relevant to the work you want to be known for. Board positions carry an assumption of credibility that's disproportionate to what you actually have to do to get one. When someone holds a board seat, even at a non-profit, the outside world reads it as someone credible evaluated this person and trusted them with governance responsibility. The perception is of a thorough vetting process. The reality, as I've experienced, is that board appointments often come down to who you know, which is useful information if you approach it strategically. I personally serve on the boards of Guide Dog Singapore, Singapore Staffing Association, and both changed how I was introduced in rooms I was already in. Introduction shifted. The level of conversation also shifted. For fractional work specifically, board experience also signals something clients care about. Strategic thinking at the organizational level, not just execution. It shows you can hold the whole picture. How to get started? Connect with MVPC. They have a board match program that will list all the NGOs that are looking for board members. It is tempting to just focus on a large one, but do know that they will be competitive. Your easier foot in the door could be lesser known ones. Of course, find causes that you genuinely believe in. Sincerity is visible and it matters. And those experiences will be required for you to say join Singapore Institute of Directors later on, because they do have a prerequisite. And that was how I managed to get in the last time. A LinkedIn post reaches your followers. A media byline reaches people who aren't following you yet and tells them something a self-published post cannot. That a credible third party decided your opinion was worth publishing. My commentaries for Channel News Asia led directly to podcast invites, panel referrals, clients relationships that I hadn't anticipated. From people who had found me through the articles, not through anything I had actively promoted. And the articles are still indexed. They still come up when someone Googles my name. They still introduces me to strangers in rooms I am not in. For fractional professionals specifically, a media presence is particularly useful at the proposal stage, when a potential client is quietly doing due diligence before deciding whether to trust you with their organization's problem. A search result that returns byline in national media answers that question before it is asked. So pitch one opinion piece this month. Not a how-to guide, an actual take on something contested in your field. Expect to be ignored the first time. Pitch again. If you have the budget, consider engaging a PR, freelancer or agency like Alpha Story to help you consistently pitch to the media. Podcasting gives you 2 things: reach you didn't have and relationships you couldn't have booked otherwise. As a guest, you inherit credibility from the host audience. I've watched this work concretely. A guest on the Singapore podcast picked up over 600 new followers from a single episode among an audience that had never heard of his name. One conversation, one recording, months of residual reach. And as a host, you gain something more valuable than reach. A legitimate reason to request time with anyone you want to know. Would you come on my podcast? Converts dramatically better than would you have coffee with me sometime? I'm not sure why this is, but it is. I started my podcast primarily to sharpen my moderation skills as I was on quite a few of those assignments. It definitely helped since I keep putting in the reps, to the extent I was asked to become the first co-host at Work It by Channel News Asia and hosting occasionally for the Financial Coconut, and now also co-hosting at Rolling Stories, which are all paid engagements. And the people you interview, their network become aware of you, episode by episode, without you having to do anything further. It's possibly the most efficient form of relationship building I've ever encountered, which for someone who find networking exhausting matters quite a bit. So start as a guest, pitch to 3 shows in your niche, then decide whether hosting is the next step. Here's why I call this moves rather than tactics. Each one reinforces the other. The book leads to speaking invites because event organizers want authors on their stage. The speaking builds relationships that lead to committee seats, and then the awards, the media coverage appear in introductions at events. The board positions also expand your network into organizations that refer clients. And lastly, the podcast conversation deepens relationships across all these circles at the same time. And over time, something shifts. You stop being someone who reaches out. You become someone people reach out to. That's what happened to me at the HR event and at Artbox. I hadn't planned either of those moments. They were the downstream results of years of putting signals into the world. Writing, speaking, publishing, teaching under my own name, attached to my own domain. This matters if you're building a fractional practice or moving into self-employment. Because the hardest part of that transition isn't the work, it's starting invisible. Nobody knows you're available. Nobody has a reason to trust you at the organizational level yet. And these 8 moves will solve that problem. Not quickly, I want to be honest about that. The compound effect is patient. Annoyingly so. None of this will work in 30 days. But a few years from now, you will either have done some version of this and be the person people think of first in your domain, the one getting approached at HR events and apparently night markets. Or you will have spent 5 years optimizing your posting frequency and wondering why the reach isn't converting. The moves are the same whether you start today or in 6 months. The only variable is when the compounding begins. So if you're building a fractional practice or simply thinking about self-employment, drop a comment below on which of this you're starting with. I read all of your comments, and if I think you're picking the wrong ones first, I'll say so. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you next week.